Hi, this is the voice, Michael Chavello. You're listening to the Premium Oddscast, hosted by leading MMA odds maker Nick Kalikas, fight scientist and author of Fightnomics Reed Kuhn, and MMA journalist Brian Hemminger. The absolute best UFC betting info, picks, statistics, and analysis from the most respected authority in mixed martial arts betting, MMAOddsBreaker.com.
Welcome to the Premium Oddscast, presented by 5Dimes. I'm Brian Hemminger, joined today by leading mixed martial arts odds maker Nick Kalikas to break down this Saturday's UFC Fight Night 49 event, which takes place in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Now, if you're unfamiliar with our format, myself and Nick will be breaking down the fight card from top to bottom, providing extensive analysis and a pick for each fight after doing our film study for the event. Then, fight scientist Reed Kuhn will step in and offer his expansive numerical insight on all bouts with sufficient data. Today, Reed will be able to contribute on 3 total bouts. Now, we went over in full detail how we went on the last event in the Fight Night 48 podcast, but overall we went 1-2 for our premium package bets to lose 2.575 units. Back to the present, UFC Fight Night 49 features a 10-fight card in total and will be aired on Fox Sports 2 and Fox Sports 1 this Saturday night. Let's dive right in. Now, kicking off the preliminary card is a flyweight contest featuring Wilson Reis, who is 17-5, taking on UFC newcomer Joby Sanchez, who is 6-0. Now, Nick, where did you open this fight, and how's the public shifted things so far?
Reis opens minus 305, the comeback on Sanchez, plus 225. Line basically tightened up a little bit more at the time of the recording, and all lines are via 5dimes.eu. Reis is now minus 280. The comeback on Sanchez is plus 240. So again, a little bit tightened up, and I think there's getting a steady two-way action on this fight as well. Sanchez is a well-rounded prospect. He's fighting from Greg Jackson's camp, so there's a little bit of hype, a little bit of buzz around the guy. He is a pretty talented fighter, no doubt about it. He seems to be improving at a rapid pace. He's got some skill on the feet. He's fast. He mixes up his kicks and punches well. Could do some serious damage striking, and he's got a solid wrestling base to go along with it. He's got decent Brazilian jiu-jitsu, decent takedown game, very good ground and pound. He's a black belt actually in Kaju Kempo. He's only a blue belt in BJJ, but I think he's a little bit above that level overall. And again, he's got that strong wrestling background. He's going to need to use it against Reis. I mean, we all know pretty much what Reis is all about. He's got tremendous grappling ability. He's got really good wrestling, very good at getting the fight to the floor and utilizing his grappling game. Most of the time, once he gets you there, you're in some serious trouble. The guy's got, I believe, 8 wins by submission on his resume. If he doesn't sub you, he grinds you out and he can control things. I think he's only improving. He's still, believe it or not, it seems like he's been around forever, but he's still only 29 years old. So I think that we're getting the best Reis that, we've seen, throughout his career. He's kind of peaking right now, and he is dropping to 125 for the first time. So I think if his weight cut goes well, he could be a serious threat at 125, no doubt about it. Reis on the feet continues to improve. That's not his strong point, but he is pushing forward. He's landing a little bit more strikes with his hands. So he can pretty much dictate where the fight goes in most cases here, but he's going to have his hands full, no doubt about it, with Sanchez. Sanchez has a striking edge. Sanchez can bust him up on the feet, so Reis is going to do what he does best and look to grind Sanchez out, look to take him down, put him on his back, and again, implement that grappling base and the grappling game plan that he's got. Sanchez, if any flaw at all in his game, I know that he has that wrestling background, but he has been put on his back. If you go back and look at footage, multiple fighters have been able to get him down. So I think Reis should probably have that similar type of success. And if that's the case, Reis is going to win the fight. Although there's a lot of buzz and hype around Sanchez, and I think that he has a big upside, I think it's a bad matchup for him to make his UFC debut, and I think Reis is going to find a way to get this fight to the floor and grind him out a little bit. So my lean is going to be Wilson Reis.
Yeah, and I'm in complete agreement. Honestly, the only thing I'm really concerned about is how Reis looks in his first cut down to the flyweight division. Hands down, he is just the better overall and much more experienced fighter than Joby Sanchez. Sanchez really has only stepped up the one time against Antonio Banuelos, who, as we all know, is definitely on a pretty steep decline right now. So there's not a ton you can learn from that other than it just being a pretty nice name on his record. Reis, on the other hand, is just a beast. He has a lot of very high quality wins already in his career, and he's looked really solid in the UFC. He, really pushed Yuri Alcantara to the limit in his last fight at bantamweight, and Alcantara is a massive bantamweight, and now he's dropping down to 125, where I think that he's going to really put some pressure on and probably become a top 10 fighter if he keeps it up. Still just 29 years old and training out of Alliance. Hayes has a very high-level ground game, both from top position and bottom. Very good transitions, very good sweeps. He's a very fun scrambler to watch. So he does a lot of things very, very good. Sanchez, training out of Jackson's, he's a solid young fighter, but my concern here is, this is a short notice replacement fight. He doesn't have a lot of time to prepare. It's going to be very difficult for his UFC debut. And his stance scares me a little bit. He is a really good kickboxer and light on his feet, but he stands very tall. And I think that could set him up for some pretty easy takedowns unless he makes some serious adjustments on this short notice. Now, if Hayes does get on top, I expect him to stay on top, at least ride out the rounds and win a decision, but he could definitely pull off a submission as well, or even a TKO. And don't count him out on the feet. He's actually shown some pretty steady improvement there, and while he's probably not as technical as Sanchez, and he's definitely not as long as Sanchez, he definitely has some pretty sneaky power in his right hand, and he actually clipped Alcantara a couple times in their fight. So watch out for that as well. So my pick is definitely going to be Wilson Hayes here. Now, moving up to the welterweight division, we have Ben Saunders returning to the UFC with a 16-6-2 overall mark, taking on UFC newcomer Chris Heatherly, who is 8-1 with 1 no contest overall. Now, Nick, what's the MMA oddsmaker's perspective on this one?
I opened Saunders minus 250, the comeback on Heatherly plus 250. And again, at the time of the recording, Saunders is sitting at minus 360, the comeback on Heatherly plus 300. So the lines got a little bit tighter, maybe a little bit more support coming in on Saunders. I'm sure we'll see him in some parlays here. Heatherly is basically Saunders' kryptonite. He's a type of fighter that could be kryptonite to Saunders. I mean, Saunders gets beat, other than Lima. I mean, typically against guys that can grind him out, get him down, control him a little bit, avoid a submission game. And Heatherly is pretty much that type of fighter. Heatherly has a very strong wrestling base. He's got good takedowns, good controls, good submissions on the feet. He kind of throws in spurts. He's not really a very good striker, but he does have a little bit of power, and he looks to close the gap and get inside. And look for those takedowns as well. So he can be dangerous because he does throw those bombs on the feet, but technically speaking, Saunders will torch him on the feet. The only thing for Heatherly is, I mean, this is a very winnable fight for him, but the problem is, I think he might be able to get a takedown or two on Saunders early on, but as the fight progresses, if you look throughout his career, he seems to fade as the fight goes, and he cannot do that against Saunders. He's going to have a rough time getting the fight to the floor in round 2, if he survives that long. In round 3, etc. And I think Saunders is eventually going to be able to stuff the takedowns and then just light him up. I think the clinch game of Saunders is really nasty. He's going to eat a lot of knees, elbows, punches, and he's going to eventually, I think, finish off Heatherly. Not to mention, Saunders, even off his back, he's very capable of finishing the fight by submission as well. So he's dangerous in all aspects. That's why Saunders is such a big favorite, and I think Saunders is probably going to finish Heatherly before the fight ends.
And I'm in complete agreement. While Saunders isn't a world beater, he is a very, very skilled Muay Thai fighter. His elbows and knees are disgusting, and Heatherly's going to have to come inside that danger zone if he wants to get the takedowns. He's not really a power double guy, despite his stature as that stocky fighter. His nickname's Stump for a reason. He's 6 inches shorter than Saunders. He's very compact, and the one thing he has going for him is he does pursue the takedown. And Saunders has been troubled by wrestlers in the past. His last 2 fights in the UFC were against John Fitch and Dennis Hallman, who were both able to grind him out and win decisions. But I think this is going to be a completely different animal. Heatherly just isn't on that level. He's a lot smaller. He's much less of a threat on the feet. I think there's really very little that Saunders has anything to be worried about in the stand-up department, so he can really open up. And on the ground, Heatherly just does not have a very good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game yet. So Saunders actually will probably be at an advantage there, even if he's on his back, because he has a really slick rubber guard, and he's pulled off several submissions off his back in his Bellator career. The one thing I am concerned about, other than the takedowns and potentially getting, laid and prayed, is the layoff. Saunders has been out for a long time, and he's coming off of a pretty brutal loss from late last year. So he's going to potentially be rusty. Now, that's going to be countered by the fact that Heatherly is making his UFC debut on short notice. So I think that actually does favor Saunders a little bit. And Saunders has fought in the UFC before, so he shouldn't be intimidated by the bright lights or anything. Now, if Saunders is really able to open up with his elbows and knees, I think this could be a short night for Heatherly. Saunders was a little limited in Bellator because he did so many tournaments, and you're not able to throw those elbows and knees until the finals or in the title fight. So I think he's really going to be unleashed here, and we could see some serious violence. So my pick is going to be Ben Saunders. Now dropping down to the bantamweight division, we have a pair of fighters making their second UFC appearance in Aaron Phillips, who is 8-1 overall, taking on Matt Hobar, who is 8-2. Now, Nick, where did you open this fight, and how's the public shifted things so far?
Hobar opens minus 230, the comeback on Phillips plus 170, and this is another line staying fairly steady, minus 220 plus 180, so again, it just tightened up a little bit more. And this is an interesting fight. I know Phillips is definitely capable of ending fights on his feet. He's a Taekwondo stylist, wrestling background, a black belt in Taekwondo, I should mention that. He also has some ground skill. He's a purple belt in BJJ. He's got decent takedown defense most of the time. Now, of course, against Sam Cecilia in his debut, he was put on his back. He was controlled. That's how he ended up losing that fight, basically. So, there are concerns with his takedown defense against far superior grapplers, and that's pretty much what you got with Hobar here. I think that, his key to victory, Hobar is a pretty well-rounded prospect in his own right, but his key to victory here against Phillips is kind of repeating the same type of performance that Sam Cecilia did. Take him down, control him, look to implement your grappling ability, submission game, but I think overall Hobar, even though he got lit up on the feet in his last fight, he's a pretty well-rounded fighter. He's got decent skin, not compared to Phillips. I think Phillips does have the significant edge on the feet overall. But as far as being a well-rounded fighter and being able to implement a game plan, I think Hobar's going to have a little bit more success there. But by far, the ground is his best attribute. So I think what we're going to see here is Phillips trying to sprawl and brawl, land his shots, and obviously Hobar can be knocked out. He's lost, I believe, twice by KO in his career, and Phillips does have some nasty knockout power with his hands or his feet. So I think Phillips is going to, again, look to keep it on the feet. Hobar is going to look to take it to the ground. You have to give the slight edge to the wrestler. I mean, based on what we saw from Hobar's past performances in his career outside of the UFC and what we saw happen I don't know. I think it's kind of a bad fight for Phillips, but it's definitely a tough one to bet, especially at the current price, because Phillips is a little bit more talented, I think, than most are giving him credit for. So my slight lean is going to be towards Hobar in this fight. I think he's probably going to get it to the ground and win that way.
And call me crazy, but I think Aaron Phillips has a shot here. Now, usually I do lean on the side of the wrestler, but Hobar just really got outclassed in his UFC debut, and he had plenty of time to prepare for it. It wasn't a short notice or anything, and Munoz just crushed him on the feet. Now, I know that he was a little more concerned about shooting in for takedowns on Munoz because his ground game is so good, and that he doesn't quite have to worry about that with Phillips, but the template is there for Phillips. We saw Phillips land some really nasty shots against Sam Cecilia in their fight before he faded and ended up losing the decision. But Phillips has some serious talent on the feet. He has that Taekwondo background. He's very good in open space. Has some big kicks, especially that left body kick, which is downright nasty. And you have to remember, he took his UFC debut on short notice, up a weight class. And I think with a full training camp, with knowing what he needs to prepare for here, because absolutely the only thing he's got to be worried about is the takedown against Hobar, and the fact that he's fighting at his more natural weight class, where he was holding his own size-wise against Cecilia, I think that he's going to be in better shape. Now, Hobar is a pretty talented wrestler, and if he gets Phillips down and keeps him down, he can definitely wear him out and take away the threat of the stand-up, because Phillips definitely tired out in his UFC debut. So, conditioning is a concern, but who knows? This could be very interesting here, because Hobar, while he's talented, he's not unstoppable, and as we saw, his chin is definitely not the best. I mean, Pedro Munoz is not exactly a powerhouse on the feet. I think Aaron Phillips is much more dangerous in terms of what he's capable of bringing on the feet with punches and kicks. And if Hobar gets clipped, he's going to be in some serious trouble. So I think as long as Phillips can keep this fight standing, he could get a finish. Now, if it goes the distance, I can definitely see Hobar winning a decision. I can see Phillips slowing down, but I think the threat of the finish is enough that Phillips might be able to pull this one off. So I'm slightly going with the underdog here, but again, not very confidently. Now moving up to the lightweight division, we have Beneil Darius, who is 7-1 overall, taking on Tony Martin, who is 8-1. Now, Nick, what's the MMA oddsmaker's perspective on this one?
I opened Martin minus 140, the comeback on Darius, even money. The line early on got flipped with the action coming in on Darius, and he was the slight favorite. Right now, it's pick 'em at 5 dimes. So, two-way support on this fight. It's an interesting fight. Close to a pick 'em, I think, is about right, with a slight lean towards Martin, in my opinion, because I think, man, the kid, well, I shouldn't say kid, both these guys are 25 years old, but I think there's a big upside to Martin. I know that, he looked tremendous early on and started fading in his UFC debut. But I still think he's going to basically improve off of that performance and get nothing but better. He's got that grinding style. He's got good wrestling. He's got good jiu-jitsu to go along with it. His stand-up game isn't bad. He needs to be a little bit more active at times, and his striking defense is definitely a little bit suspect. But that being said, I think he's got some power on the feet, mixes things up well enough and closes the gap fast enough that more times than not he puts his opponent on the ground and is able to control and pretty much do what he wants with him. Now his cardio, he did get tired in his debut, so again that's a little bit of a concern there, but that was a grueling fight for him to take. So I think Darius, I know he's coming off that disappointing loss to Nijam, where he got caught, he got knocked out, rocked, so I understand that didn't bode too well for him, but I realize that people are also still showing him a little bit of respect because skill set wise, Darius definitely has some ability. I mean, the guy has pretty good striking. He's more of a grappling based fighter himself. He's got pretty good jiu-jitsu, but on the southpaw, he's pretty long, and he's effective with the striking, has a little bit more knockout power. I think overall Darius on the feet is actually a little bit better than Martin for sure. But I think as far as the overall fight goes, I think Martin's a little bit ahead of Darius right now, even though Darius has that grappling background and he's more than capable of submitting fighters. I think that Martin can pretty much neutralize his ground game, control him a little bit more or so, and probably grind out a decision win. If not, get a late finish as well, because both these guys tend to gas a little bit. So again, that is a little bit of a concern, but this should be a good fight, and it's a big fight for both of these guys. I mean, they don't want to come off back-to-back losses in the UFC. You can easily see one get let go if they do lose. So, an important fight for both, and I think Martin's going to probably edge him out here. So I'm going to go with Martin.
And I'm in relative agreement, although I think this is one of the closest fights on the card to call. The biggest difference for me is size. I think Martin is just going to be a lot bigger and a lot stronger than Darius. Darius is a little bit undersized at lightweight, and I'm surprised that, he didn't even consider dropping down to featherweight after he kind of got manhandled there by Ramsey Nijam in his last fight. Now Martin, he looked really promising in that first round. He had his opponent in a world of hurt, almost got the first round submission, and then just wasn't quite able to pull it out, and then, faded and gassed. This time around, full training camp, I think he knows what he needs to work on, the conditioning. He needs to, improve his stand-up a little bit. Although both of these guys have a little bit of power, I think Darius is slightly more technical, but I think Martin can wear him down. And I think that's very important. And the other big change here, or difference, is I think Darius' Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is definitely better, although Martin is a very competent grappler in his own right. Darius just has that technique. People really hyping him up for what he's capable of doing in grappling tournaments and everything. Although that doesn't always translate, as you saw in his last fight when he was really going for leg locks and Nijam was able to easily get out of him and then put him in some big time problems. Now, both of these guys are going to slow down as the fight goes on. I am a little concerned about Martin gassing as bad as he did in his last fight. If he does, he could be in trouble. But punch for punch, I think Martin can definitely take a shot a lot better than Darius. Darius definitely became a completely different fighter once he started taking some punishment there from Nijam. And Martin, as tough as it was to watch because of the gassing, he still took the punishment and kept going and kept trying to get takedowns. So I think Martin definitely has a chance here. Even if this fight goes the distance and both of these guys fade, I think it might be Martin that comes out on top. Although, again, not crazy confident, but my pick is Tony Martin. Now, moving up to the welterweight division, we have a barn burner here with Neil Magny, who is 11-4, taking on Alex Garcia, who is 12-1. Now, Nick, where did you open this fight, and how's the public shifted things so far?
Ivan Garcia minus 245, the comeback on Magny plus 175. Tons of hype around Garcia. He got bet up significantly in his last fight, but not the case this time. So I'm a little bit surprised how much the general action did come in early on Magny. But I think people wised up a little bit and realized Garcia is not as good as they all thought, especially his cardio. His chin's a little suspect as well, and Magny has been on an extreme roll recently. But this should be a good fight, and I am actually going to lean towards Garcia. So the general action overall has dropped the line to minus 145 for Garcia, the comeback 125 on Magny, at the time of the recording. I think they're starting to disrespect Garcia a little bit too much. I know that most people are thinking Garcia will probably gas and all Magny has to do is survive, the first round and get the W, and that could be very well the case, because Garcia's cardio is kind of that bad, but he was able to go through that war with Spencer. He managed to survive all 3 rounds and get the deserving nod. It was close, but I think he did deserve to get that W there too. Spencer's a tough fighter. A lot of people are saying that Magny is a better fighter, and I can see that as well. So this should be even a harder test for Garcia here. But the problem is, I don't know if Magny's going to survive Garcia early. I know a lot of people, again, are saying that he has the ability to do that and then take over the fight, but I think Garcia's going to get in there, slam Magny down, take his back, maybe sub him really quick. Also, Garcia does have a ton of power, and Magny has been rocked and has been put out in his career before as well. Overall, he's pretty tough, but I could see Garcia finishing this fight. I mean, the guy is definitely more than capable by sub or KO, and he's going to have a huge power advantage over Magny, again, early on, and I think that he won't survive more than likely. But if he does, it is going to get interesting, no doubt about it. I think Magny, could finish Garcia late. He could do what everybody or most people are betting on, and just kind of outlast him. He's got better cardio. He continues to improve his takedown defense, his stand-up game overall. But I just have a feeling everybody's kind of underestimating Garcia in this spot, and I think Garcia is going to end up, looking really good and probably getting a finish in, a highlight reel type fashion. So, awesome fight. I could see it going either way, but I got to lean with Garcia and against the grain right now. So my pick is Garcia.
And I'm going to go with the initial public reaction, and I'm going to pick Neil Magny. And this is why. The main thing that I'm concerned about is Alex Garcia basically has about 1 round to pull this off, because he is just a buzzsaw real quick. He comes out hard and aggressive, and Magny, if he weathers the storm, he's going to be in really good shape. Magny is usually able to control the distance with his jab. He has a ridiculous reach. Hands down, pound for pound, the best reach in MMA. It's disgusting. And he's finally learning to use it. And he's putting it together. He's on a nice little win streak now, and actually was able to get a finish in his last fight. So he looked terrific. And I think he's just starting to put it all together. He's becoming a pretty solid fighter. Mixes up his takedowns. He's got some pretty good wrestling. The only thing that you're really concerned about is how he responds when somebody really puts the pressure on him. And you know that Alex Garcia is going to do that. He loves to just push forward, try to land big haymakers, and when that doesn't work, he shoots in for really explosive takedowns and just throws people around the cage. And if Magny's able to weather that early storm, Garcia's gonna slow down, Garcia's gonna become a lot more hittable, and Garcia can get himself in some serious trouble, as you saw in his fight against Seth Baczynski outside the UFC. When he didn't get that early finish, Baczynski was able to turn the tides on him, and I could see the same thing happening here. Now, if Magny's actually able to use his reach and keep Garcia at the end of a jab and straight punches, he's going to be in even better shape. Garcia can get disheartened, and Magny can really turn the tides on him here. Basically, it's just all about whether or not Garcia is able to swarm him and really make him pay, because Magny does not have a terrific chin, and if he does get cracked, he could be in some serious, serious trouble, because Garcia is a ferocious finisher, especially when he smells blood. So that's really what this fight's going to come down to, and I think Magny has developed enough as a fighter that he can weather this storm. So my pick's going to be Neil Magny, and I think he can either win a decision or maybe even get a stoppage late if Garcia slows down enough. Now dropping down to the featherweight division, we have Chaz Skelly, who is 11-1 overall, taking on Tom Ninamaki, who is 21-6-1. Now Nick, what's the MMA oddsmaker's perspective on this one?
Should be another great fight. Interesting stylistic matchup. I mean, both these guys prefer to grapple. That's definitely their best attribute by far. Ninamaki starting out with him, I mean, he's a well-rounded, solid veteran, and he continues to improve his game for sure. I mean, what is disappointing with me with Ninamaki is his stand-up game, I think, should be evolved a little bit farther than it is now. I mean, that's where he's lacking a little bit. He needs to be a little bit more aggressive and a little bit more efficient and accurate on the feet. But man, you can't argue how good his grappling is getting. I mean, his wrestling, his takedowns are getting legit. Even if you put the guy on his back, he more times than not manages to scramble out of that position, find himself in top position and working some pretty nice ground and pound and working his control and jiu-jitsu game. So I think overall, Ninamaki's probably going to have the edge on the ground over Skelly. And that's kind of crazy to say a little bit because Skelly does have that outstanding wrestling background. That's his best attribute, of course, as well. He's a team takedown fighter. Don't have to say much about his wrestling credentials. They speak for themselves. But against a guy like Bektik, he was put on his back. He was controlled a little bit more. So, Skelly is definitely, able to be controlled like that. And I think Ninamaki has the top control enough to probably give Skelly some trouble if the fight does get to the floor like that. Stand-up wise though, I do think that, Skelly's improving at a faster rate. He's a little bit longer. He uses his hands a little bit more efficient and he's developing a little bit of power. So I think Skelly's probably going to want to stuff the takedowns and look to keep this fight upright. I think that's probably his best route to victory here because on the ground, again, it'll go back and forth. They neutralize each other out. And I do give the slight lean to Ninamaki, but I do on the feet give the slight lean to Skelly. So this is going to be an interesting matchup. Whoever can implement their game plan and take control of this fight is going to get the nod probably on the judges' scorecards. I think both these guys are tough enough to withstand each other, neutralize each other out overall. So it probably does hit the cards. And if it does hit the cards, I mean, we could see a controversial type decision. And I have been bouncing back and forth a little bit on this fight, but I'm slightly leaning towards Ninamaki. I think it is an interesting matchup, but if we are going to see more of a ground type battle, I think it's really his fight to win or lose. He could lose it, but I'm going to slightly lean towards Ninamaki in this spot.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree, although this is another really evenly matched fight. Skelly just had a really difficult UFC debut. Bektik is fantastic. He was supposed to be fighting on this card again, and he would have really had a tough fight against Holloway. But back to Skelly, he's a solid wrestler with decent stand-up. I mean, he's not a spectacular technician on the feet, but he does a lot of things right. He's pretty long with his jabs and his right hands. He can fire away pretty safely, and he doesn't really leave himself way exposed and open to takedowns. So if he really wants to, I can see Skelly outworking Ninamaki on the feet. Ninamaki is a really good grappler, not the greatest wrestler in terms of takedowns. He's more of a really good scrambler, really good at sweeps and transitions. And if Skelly really wants to keep this fight standing, I think he can. And neither of these guys are spectacular stand-up fighters, especially Ninamaki, but I do think Skelly should have the advantage there. And if he wants to, and he wants to keep it standing, I think he can definitely outwork Ninamaki on the feet and score some points here. I really don't see a finish if this fight stays standing. Neither guy is super powerful, but Skelly knows what he's doing up there, and I think he's got a really solid shot. Now, if it does go to the ground, Ninamaki is really tricky. He got caught in his last fight, but that's not exactly the thing that normally happens. I mean, his UFC debut, he looked much better against Ronnie Yaya, a very competent ground fighter, and he was able to win a ground battle against him. So I definitely see Ninamaki winning the grappling exchanges if this fight goes to the canvas. So if this fight stays standing, Chaz Skelly probably will win in the clinch, and he probably will win in open space. But that's really what this fight's going to come down to. Who can impose their will? And hopefully Skelly doesn't just resort to wrestling if things get hairy, because I can see him getting himself in a bit of trouble here. But he is a really solid fighter, and I think this might be a chance for him to really shine. So my pick's going to be Chaz Skelly. Now moving up to the lightweight division, we have James Vick, who's 5-0, taking on Valmir Lazaro, who is 12-2. Now, Nick, where did you open this fight, and how's the public shifted things so far?
I opened Vic minus 165, the comeback on Lazaro, plus 125. Another case where line staying steady. It's minus 150 for Vic now, plus 130 for Lazaro, so it tightened up a little bit again. This is an awesome fight as well, man. I've been a fan of Vic's. Honestly, I think he's got a huge upside from the time he was on The Ultimate Fighter. With his frame, with his athletic ability, period, with his ability to keep the fight upright. He stuffs takedowns at will. He's got good knees from the clinch. He's long for the division again, so he's developing his striking arsenal overall. And he's got a well-rounded skill set. The BJJ and ground attributes seem to be a little bit, best for him. I mean, that's what he does best. But he's going to continue to improve on those all the areas overall. So, but that being said, I mean, I was pretty high on Vic, but at the same time, Lazaro, man, he presents some serious problems for Vic. I mean, Lazaro's a hyped prospect, trains with Aldo Barao and the guys over there in Brazil, so it really comes from a good camp. We know that. He's primarily a striker. He too is long for the weight class. He switches stances on the feet, so he's a little tricky to deal with. He does like fighting southpaw a little bit more so though, which is a good attribute to have in this spot. He uses jab well to find his range. He pushes forward. He counterattacks very well. He's got strong kicks to go along with it, and he uses them very frequently. So the guy has an arsenal to throw at you on the feet for sure. I mean, he comes at you with a variety in his attack, and he's very effective. He's got 9 KOs on his resume for a reason. I mean, the guy can end fights. I have no doubt about it. In his ground game, his takedown defense seems to be okay. Now there are some question marks about his ground game, but I think he's going to probably be able to keep the fight upright, stuff enough takedowns if Vic goes for the takedown, and utilize his striking advantage on the feet here, and Vic can be in some serious trouble. Now, what doesn't really sit too well with me on the show, Vic showed that he had a tendency to fold a little bit against Chiesa. I think that he was doing well in that fight, and then he, kind of almost, it looked like to me that again he folded. He kind of gave up a little bit when the getting got rough. So I think that that's something to keep an eye on. And if Lazaro puts that kind of pressure on him, I think that Vic might have a tendency to fold in this spot as well. So really, it's up to Lazaro, I think, here. If he's able to keep the fight upright and utilize his striking advantage, he's probably going to win this fight. So I'm going to lean with Lazaro at the underdog, pick 'em price or whatever you want to call it here. I think that he's probably going to come through and beat Vic straight out. I think there's a good chance he probably finishes the fight as well. So Lazaro's going to be my pick.
And I agree completely on this one. Lazaro really does seem like a special type of talent. Training out of Nova União, he is a rock-solid striker, big-time knockout artist, very tricky on the feet and long and lanky and knows how to use it. Those are the type of fighters that can really make a difference in a division, especially if they can keep the fight in their realm. Now, Vic, I'm not sure that he'll be able to get the fight into his realm. He doesn't have a specific realm. He's a pretty good ground fighter. He's an okay stand-up fighter. He has potential, especially due to his length, but I'm not sure how it's going to work in this fight. It's going to be very difficult for him because on the feet he is going to be completely outclassed. Basically what Vic has going for him the best is, he uses his knees well, his elbows well, just because of how long he is. But you're not going to see Lazaro sticking around in the clinch to let Vic knee him. He's not going to be shooting in for takedowns right into a knee. Vic is probably going to have his biggest advantage here in terms of submission ability. He is a very competent grappler. He knows what he's doing down there. And he definitely has some solid submission ability. His last fight, his official UFC debut against Ramsey Nijem, he looked terrific, ended up getting that power guillotine, I believe. But I'm not sure he's going to be able to do that against Lazaro because Lazaro is going to be sticking away from him, keeping his distance, and Vic's going to have to venture into dangerous territory if he wants to close the distance and try to work that submission game. I really see Lazaro able to keep the fight standing, keep his distance, and really start picking him apart on the feet. Vic will probably be in some serious trouble at some point if he cannot get this fight to the canvas. Lazaro is a very dangerous striker, has a lot of power, has some elite training alongside some of the best lightweights and featherweights and bantamweights in the world at Nova União. So my pick is definitely going to be Valmir Lazaro. I think this guy is a very talented fighter, and you're going to see a big, splashy UFC debut on Saturday night. Now, this takes us to a featherweight contest between Max Holloway, who is 9-3 overall, taking on late replacement UFC newcomer Clay Collard, who is 13-4 with 1 no contest. Now, Nick, what's the MMA oddsmaker's perspective on this one?
Well, I opened Holloway minus 385, the comeback on Collard plus 265. And since that time, a little bit more action coming in on Holloway. He is up to minus 400 right now. The comeback plus 325. Not really that much surprise. I mean, Collard is taking this fight on really short notice, and coming into your debut, making your UFC debut against a fighter like Holloway, not the easiest thing in the world. Both these guys are extremely young. Collard is 21, I believe. Holloway, of course, is only 22. So imagine the upside for both these guys is tremendous. I mean, they're both going to continue to improve. Collard overall has had plenty of fights being so young, and he trains with the Pit Elevated in Utah. So he's coming in for training with a good camp as well. And there's kind of a big upside, like I said, to Collard. He's got KO power on the feet. He's the type of guy that, man, he brings it. I mean, he pushes a high pace. He's very aggressive on the feet. He's an amateur boxing champion, to be exact, actually. So that's pretty impressive as well. Now, he's very aggressive, pushes forward, throws heavy leather. He does have, again, solid boxing. His dirty boxing is probably even more impressive. I mean, once he gets you up against the cage, he goes to your body well, throws elbows well, utilizes everything really in the dirty boxing realm. So good to see him have that kind of aggression, and he could be very effective with it. He's got 8 knockouts on his resume, so he can do some serious damage next place. He's got solid wrestling too, and good ground and pound. If he gets on top of you and starts landing some bombs, he could definitely be effective. But the problem with Collard is he does tend to fade as the fight goes on a little bit. He is taking this fight again on very short notice. And I think even though he can have some success early on against Holloway, I think he will with his aggression. It's just going to make Holloway kind of backtrack a little bit, and Collard's going to land some effective blows early on. But Holloway's a very tough guy to finish, and I think he does a good job, as we all seen recently especially. Holloway can adapt as the fight goes on, and he starts coming on. I mean, in rounds 2 and round 3, he performs better. So that's not a good sign for Collard, because even if round 1 is competitive and Collard does steal it, Holloway's probably going to win round 2 or 3, if not even put him out as Collard starts to fade a little bit. So there is some serious upside to Collard, but I just think, unfortunately for him, Holloway's going to stuff enough takedowns. He's going to be able to start picking him apart as the fight goes on, and he's probably going to win the fight. So my pick is going to be Holloway. He is a high favorite, so I don't know if there's a ton of value actually at the current price as far as the bet goes, but as far as the pick goes, there's no doubt.
Yeah, and I have to agree. Now, Clay Collard, he is a pretty solid talent, trained out of a great gym at the Pit Elevated, and he's a very dangerous striker. The problem here is it's such a short notice replacement, and Max Holloway is fantastic. I mean, he's borderline top 15 right now, and he probably would have been top 15 if he'd defeated Bektik in this main card spot. Now, I don't know about this time around, but basically, Collard's best chance to win is he needs to just come out guns blazing, because Holloway has been known to have a slow start. He's lost the first round of other fights, and he's gotten himself in a bit of trouble and then came back really strong and just dominated his opponents. Now, Collard, on the other hand, very dangerous in the clinch. He's got some really solid Muay Thai and lands some big knees and elbows and even straight punches when he starts throwing them in combination. So it's all going to be about, can he jump on Holloway before Holloway settles in? Because once Holloway settles in, I think Collard's going to be in some big, big trouble, just because Holloway throws a lot of punches in bunches. His combinations are fantastic. And while he doesn't have a lot of one-punch power, it accumulates, and then you get in big trouble. And he's been able to get several stoppages that way, because he mixes it up to the head and body, and he just overwhelms you. So this is all going to come down to who can settle in first. And I really think that Collard might get affected here by those UFC jitters and the short notice, bright lights and everything, biggest fight of his career. And Holloway is probably going to be in pretty good shape. And as long as Holloway can survive those first couple minutes before he settles in, then this is his fight to lose. And you'll probably see Holloway really marching towards that top 15. So my pick is Max Holloway to pull this one out. Now moving up to the middleweight division, we have a top 15 matchup between Francis Carmont, who is 22-9, taking on Talis Litus, who is 23-4. Now, Nick, where did you open this fight, and how's the public shifted things so far?
Well, I opened Carmont minus 150 to comeback on Litus, plus 110, and it is staying steady at minus 150, but the comeback tightened up a little bit more for this one, and Litus is actually plus 130. So staying a little bit steady. There has been some two-way action for sure on this fight, back and forth. A lot of split opinions out there are keeping it steady. It's a tough one, man. I mean, Carmont coming in off of a 2-fight losing streak. Litus has been pretty hot. He's a hard fighter to beat. He's got some momentum going for him in the UFC. You usually don't see a guy on a couple fight winning streak go against a guy that's coming off a couple losses. So that's interesting to me. But that being said, I think it's a great fight. I mean, two guys that, are definitely on the upper tier level as far as middleweights go. And this is an important fight for the division for sure. I mean, Carmont losing 3 in a row, he might actually get cut, and that's crazy because considering he was just making kind of a title run here, or at least put himself in position for one, recently. Now, Litus, he is the more well-rounded fighter in this situation. I think he's got better stand-up skill. He's obviously got a little bit better jiu-jitsu. Carmont did hang in there against Jacare. His sub-defense was pretty good. So you gotta respect that and give him credit for that as well. But it's not out of the question the Litus still, if the fight hits the floor, maybe, gets a sub, as well. But I doubt it. I think Carmont's takedown defense and, his overall sub defense is good enough to probably withstand that. But Litus is the better, again, more technical fighter all around. I think Carmont's main edge in this fight is maybe his strength advantage. He could maybe bully Litus, put him up against the cage, grind him out that way. He is a powerful guy, maybe land some shots on the feet, but Litus has proven to have a pretty solid chin. So I don't think Carmont gets rid of him that way either. So I'm expecting this fight to probably hit the scorecards. And if it does, I think Litus is going to probably squeak out a very close decision. I think he can maybe scramble, get a couple quick takedowns on Carmont. I don't know if he could keep him there long. But he definitely has the better grappling on the floor. And I think he is, even if, and again, like I mentioned earlier, I think Litus can actually outpoint him. He's getting a little bit more power, getting a little more confidence in his stand-up. So I think it's really Litus' fight to win or lose here. So I'm going to go with the slight underdog, and I'm going to pick Litus to win it straight out.
Believe it or not, I'm in complete agreement here. These guys are moving in complete opposite directions. Litus actually has all the confidence back that you saw when he was, on his title run the first time around. He clearly has been working on improving his overall game. He's a much more dangerous fighter than he was the first time he was in the UFC. Now we're seeing him pursue more takedowns, be very aggressive, and his stand-up has improved drastically. And despite Francis Carmont having, a kickboxing background, I would say that Litus is actually probably the more dangerous fighter on the feet. If he pushes forward, he could definitely get Carmont in trouble. We saw Carmont get hurt there against CB Holloway, so Litus has some power now. He could definitely do something there. Really, honestly, Carmont has turned into this type of fighter that only really likes to pursue takedowns and get his opponents in the clinch. It's not the most appealing. It's definitely not the most fan-friendly type of fighting style. And I think Litus is suited to handle it pretty well. He's got a really solid grappling ability. I think he can turn some of those clinches and takedown attempts around on Carmont. He definitely has the better submission game. He's a very talented Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist. And he's not just a Jiu-Jitsu guy. He's a Jiu-Jitsu guy with some solid wrestling. So, I think that actually is a much more dangerous type of fighter. And you gotta go with the confidence too, the mental side of the game. Carmont is definitely questioning everything after, going on that tremendous run to start his UFC career, being on a 2-fight losing streak against a guy with a ton of momentum. It's going to be very difficult for Carmont to go in there and have that same faith in his abilities. Now, it's still not going to be an easy fight for Litus by any stretch of the imagination, but if he can control the center of the cage during the stand-up, if he can make Carmont go backwards, and if he can avoid getting pressed against the fence and put on his back repeatedly, then he should be in pretty good shape. Carmont's biggest advantage in this fight is going to be his size and strength. So he's going to have to be careful not to get bullied here, because that's how Carmont usually wins his fights. My pick is going to be Thales Litus, tentatively, because you just never know. Carmont could bully him and wear him down. But I really think that this is the new and improved Thales Litus 2.0, so I'm going to pick Litus to win this one. Now, Reed, what do the numbers tell us?
Well, if this is Thales Litus 2.0, don't forget that version 1.0 wasn't that bad either. He was a guy who made it all the way to a title fight in the UFC, and then had a couple losses and washed out. I think part of that was maybe stylistic. People were unhappy with that fight with Anderson Silva. It was kind of a snooze fest. But he's back, and he has looked fantastic since coming back, and he's managed to put it all together. He looked great on his feet when you thought he had maybe more of a grappling mismatch with Tom Watson. and he was using his hands quite well. So, he's probably able to do this everywhere, and so I am slightly leaning that way. Francis Carmont is tough to deal with, usually because he is always bigger than his opponents, and for once he's actually going to have the same reach as his opponent, so that might not be the usual advantage that he has. He's able to just grind people out. He's impossible to throw around. But Litus, he's got this. He definitely has a jiu-jitsu edge. Now the question is, can he, from a strength standpoint, actually impose his will on Carmont? I agree again with you that this probably goes to the cards, but I think that Litus might be able to put Carmont in difficult positions. He may not be able to finish, but that should be enough to win the necessary rounds for an upset. So it's a tough call. I think the over is probably the most likely, occurrence here, but, predicting a finish is difficult either way. But Litus, as an underdog, makes a very interesting bet here.
Excellent stuff. Thanks, Reed. Now moving on to the co-main event of the evening, we have a welterweight contest featuring Mike Pyle, who is 26-9-1, taking on Jordan Meehan, who is 28-9 overall. Now, Nick, what's the MMA oddsmaker's perspective on this one?
I opened Meehan minus 190, the comeback on Pyle plus 150. Line staying basically steady. Meehan right now is minus 200 over at Dimes, and the comeback on Pyle plus 170. So again, line got a little bit tighter. Some decent two-way action in this fight as well. It's an interesting stylistic matchup. I mean, Meehan obviously at age 24 is a younger, fresher fighter, even though he's got a ton of fights. He's got almost as many as actually Pyle, if not more. So as far as pure fights, I mean, they both have a ton of fights. But Meehan, again, is a little bit younger. Always improving his over. He hasn't looked the best recently, though. I mean, he's had definitely some setbacks a little bit in his career, or his performance, I should say. And Pyle has actually looked pretty good. I think despite the age factor, I mean, Pyle has been putting together a pretty impressive performances overall. And his resume is definitely one to be proud of. But that being said, the way these guys match up, Pyle, I think, has to get this fight to the floor. And if he's not able to get the fight to the floor, he's going to get KO'd. I mean, he's been knocked out 4 times throughout his career. Meehan is the type of fighter that he gets rid of people with suspect chins. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he's got that much explosive power. His fight IQ is smart. His takedown defense probably is good enough to keep it upright as well. Now, I'm not discounting Pyle in the stand-up game. I know he's pretty talented and well-rounded in all aspects of the game. He's got a little bit of power to go along with it, decent clinch work as well. But I still think it's Meehan's fight to win or lose. If he fights smart, I think he could probably finish this fight early on, probably in round 1, and, land on that suspect chin of Pyle's a little bit. So I have to lean with the favorite here and go with Meehan, because I do think eventually he lands that shot and puts Pyle out. If it hits the scorecards, I'm sure it'll be competitive, but you also got to lean a little bit more towards Meehan in that aspect as well. So Meehan is my side.
Yeah, and I completely agree. A lot of the intangibles are in Jordan Meehan's side. Obviously, the biggest one is the age gap. Mike Pyle's 38 years old, Jordan Meehan's 24. Just monstrous age gap, and almost every time you have a fight like this, it's usually the younger guy that ends up pulling it out. Meehan's going to be quicker, younger, a better chin, and he's definitely has taken a lot less punishment throughout his career, despite having fought actually one more fight in his career than Mike Pyle. Just because Meehan has a really solid tendency of just battering opponents on the feet and getting them out of there quick. Now, one thing that you do have to be worried about here is Jordan Meehan does slow down after the first round, especially after the second round. I mean, we've seen him multiple times. If a guy weathers that early storm, he could get himself in a bit of trouble, especially against a guy with some power like Pyle. Pyle on the feet, he's not the most technical guy, but he definitely has that ability to knock you out. I believe he had a streak there where he scored about 4 straight knockouts in the UFC welterweight division, so he's definitely dangerous if he connects. Now, I'm not quite sure that he's going to be able to connect against Meehan, though, especially in that first round when he's going to be so dangerous. Meehan has very good technique. He has a great jab. He has excellent combinations, and he can knock people out that you don't expect him to knock out. Like Dan Miller, who had never been knocked out, and he put him away with ease. Now, Mike Pyle has a much worse chin than Dan Miller, so if Jordan Meehan is able to connect with anything really solid, then Pyle is going to be in some serious trouble. Now, Pyle in the past has also used his offensive wrestling to win fights, like John Hathaway. but I do not see that happening here. Meehan has some pretty solid takedown defense, especially early. The only way he's going to be able to do this is if Meehan slows down in the second or third round, if Pyle weathers the storm and is able to take over. So while I do think Mike Pyle has a chance if this fight goes long, I don't think it's going to go long. Meehan does a really good job of putting people away that he's supposed to put away, and I think he's going to do that against Mike Pyle, especially since Mike Pyle's taken this fight on pretty short notice. So my pick is Jordan Meehan. Now, Reed, what do the numbers tell us for this one?
Well, this is interesting because both guys, first of all, you mentioned the huge age difference, but when you look at what they've done in the last several years, they have a lot of wins and they've only lost to Matt Brown, a common Matt Brown, but otherwise neither one of them has lost in years. So that's why this is a co-main event and it's an interesting one. I agree with you. I think Jordan Meehan has the advantages standing up. They're both very precise, accurate strikers. Meehan is a little bit more active. He's gonna push the pace a little bit harder. But then Pyle on the flip side has the much higher knockdown rate, but also a much worse chin. So Meehan is gonna have better defense. I think per exchange, Meehan is gonna be winning these exchanges and should be winning the rounds. There is, the threat of Mike Pyle landing something crazy, but so far Meehan to date, has been pretty strong. You know, again, succumbing to Matt Brown by strikes is not unusual in that division, even for top level guys. I do think Meehan has that advantage round to round. Now, the grappling, is another good question. Meehan far less likely to be going for the takedown than Mike Pyle. Meehan's takedown defense is about average, actually slightly below average, and just generally speaking, since he's not initiating a lot of wrestling, he's been on the receiving end of some punishment on the ground. His ground control stat is not very good. So that is a susceptibility. Meehan has to keep this standing. And size-wise, they're about the same size. So, early on, as long as he's the fresher guy, I think he maybe still has the advantage there and can keep this standing. So overall, some advantages over on Meehan's corner. There is some risk, cause Pyle is certainly dangerous and, both guys really are quite good. And this is, I think, an interesting co-main event.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Reed. Now, moving on to the main event of the evening and dropping down to the lightweight division, we have former champion Benson Henderson, who is 21-3 overall, taking on number 5 ranked Rafael dos Anjos, who is 21-7. Now, Nick, where did you open this fight, and how's the public shifted things so far?
I opened Henderson minus 300, the comeback on Dos Anjos, plus 220, and another spot that the line's actually staying fairly steady. It's minus 300, plus 250, so line again got a little bit tighter. Seems like it's a decent spot to open at. Man, this is actually a good fight. I know a lot of people are probably going to be counting Dos Anjos out based on especially his performance against Khabib. He got grinded out by a tremendous wrestler, aggressive fighter. And you know what, to our surprise, how easy it was actually for Khabib. I thought Dos Anjos would actually put up a better effort all around that fight, but I was wrong. But here, I think matchups are everything. And even though a lot of people, I think I'm really looking back to that Khabib fight because I think a lot of people are going to compare Henderson to that kind of fighter. Even though Henderson, I think, is a little bit more well-rounded than Khabib at this point, I still think that they're going to compare the Henderson grinding type of style to his. So I think matchup-wise, this is a little bit different, though. I don't think Henderson's going to have as much success as Khabib did getting the takedowns against Dos Anjos and grinding him out the way he did. I think we're going to see this fight probably play out on the feet a little bit more. I know that Henderson's definitely the kind of fighter that likes to get the fight up against a cage, land some decent dirty boxing, some good knees, elbows, everything he can throw at you definitely with some power and can be very, very. But I do think that Dos Anjos is probably a little bit better overall and more technical on the feet. Henderson has those nasty leg kicks, though. But both these guys are more than capable of doing damage with the leg kicks, no doubt about it. But overall, I think Dos Anjos still has a little bit of an edge standing up. His only flaw, though, and my concern about this fight is it is 5 rounds, and Dos Anjos does have a tendency to slow down as the fight goes. So if he doesn't hurt Henderson early, which is going to be a hard task to do, he'll probably lose round 4 and 5, if not get finished maybe late in this fight as well. So really, I think Henderson can at least squeak out 3 of the 5 rounds pretty comfortably because of the fading aspect of Dos Anjos. I think Henderson can steal probably 1 early round, even do better than that. Of course, he's more than capable of doing better than that, but I think it's going to be a very competitive type of decision with Henderson probably, winning, like I said, 3 out of the 5 rounds. So I'm going to lean Henderson here because he is, again, very solid, hard to stop. He dictates where the fight goes. He dictates the pace of the fight more times than not as well. But I have a sneaking suspicion that Dos Anjos is going to perform a lot better than all of us think, and it's going to be a relatively close fight. But my pick has to be Ben Henderson because I think it is his fight to win or lose.
And once again, I'm in complete agreement. The main thing here for me is the fact that this is a 5-round fight. That is glaring, because unless Rafael Dos Anjos finishes this fight, I really don't see him winning it. Even though he is a little bit more technical on the feet, he's definitely more technical on the feet, and I do think he has a better submission game overall. The biggest difference here is Benson Henderson has a better chin. Benson Henderson pushes a better pace. Benson Henderson moves forward, which the judges love. Benson Henderson no-sells the offense of his opponent, which tricks the judges even if he is getting hit more. And Benson Henderson has better conditioning. Dos Anjos, the only way he wins his fight almost certainly is a finish. He needs to either catch Henderson with something on the feet and put him away, or catch him in a submission, which is very difficult to do. So I'm definitely concerned about that. Dos Anjos on the feet is pretty solid. He's got really nice power. He has a really nasty left hook, and his kicks are solid both to the body and to the legs. But I really don't think Benson Henderson is going to be responding to those kicks. The only kicks that have ever really hurt him were Anthony Pettis, and as good as Dos Anjos' stand-up is, it's nowhere near Anthony Pettis' stand-up. Now, Henderson, he's going to be trying to force Dos Anjos to move backwards. And when he does that, that's actually going to put him in a really good spot, because Dos Anjos does not like getting pressured. We saw that against Nurmagomedov. Now, Henderson does not have the same level of wrestling as Nurmagomedov, but he still can push that same level of pace to basically offset Dos Anjos' stand-up advantage. And I really, even though Dos Anjos has a slightly better jiu-jitsu, I think that's going to be completely null and void by Henderson's elite submission defense. So he can pretty much ignore whatever Dos Anjos throws at him on the ground. Especially as we saw that Nurmagomedov was able to do that, and I think Nurmagomedov has a little bit worse submission defense than Henderson. So a lot of things are in Benson Henderson's favor, and as this fight wears on, Dos Anjos is going to slow down, no doubt about it. He has had a lot of trouble in the past just in 3-round fights, and I really doubt that there's anything different here. So, and Henderson is the king of 5-round fights. He has gone the distance in 5-round fights all the time. And even in his last one, he ended up getting a late finish against Kabalov, a very tough Russian fighter. So I really see Henderson just basically wearing Dos Anjos out over the course of the fight, and eventually either getting a finish or he will definitely win a decision if it actually does go the distance. So my pick is Benson Henderson. Now, Reed, what do the numbers tell us for this one?
Well, I agree with you in the conclusion, and the stats are very, very similar between the two guys, but you have to remember there is a difference in the strength of schedule, and Henderson is logging lots and lots of rounds against the best guys in the business, and has been for a long, long time. So you have to put it in perspective that even though the stats are very similar, just Henderson was able to do against much tougher guys. And so I think you're right. It's his cage control. It's his very clean defense. It's just stylistically, he is a more efficient fighter. He tends to outwork people. He tends to damage them and not take a lot of punishment himself. Dos Anjos is a little bit more of a wash. He's generally won decisions, but in terms of what he puts out and what he absorbs, it's actually almost even, which would make him average in a sense. Whereas Henderson is definitely on the plus side of that equation. So, I think it is those elements you described. I think, Henderson is just going to outwork him. And because this is 5 rounds, that's a huge advantage to Henderson. He should be taking those later rounds, even if a couple in between are so close and competitive that they could be a toss up. And Dos Anjos is certainly capable of doing that. He's certainly capable of hanging with Benson Henderson. He has the credentials. He shouldn't be out of his league in terms of jiu-jitsu, of course. Both these guys are extremely high level. So, I see it as very competitive, but I just see Henderson is pulling away as the fight goes on.
So that'll do it for our full event breakdown for UFC Fight Night 49. Part 2 of the Premium Oddscast featuring our premium bets will be out Friday morning around 6 a.m. Eastern Time. So stay tuned for that if you're an MMAOddsBreaker.com premium member. If we have a free play to give out, make sure to follow at Premium Oddscast or at MMAOB_premium on Twitter, because that's where we'll post them first. We can also notify you of our free bets via email if you prefer that method. Just send an email to picks@MMAOddsBreaker.com and we'll add you to our free bet mailing list. Also, feel free to like our Premium Oddscast Facebook page. We post articles, show announcements, and plenty of other information there, so you can stay up to date on everything from us if you're interested. Special thanks to our sponsor, 5 Dimes. Good luck, everyone, and hopefully the betting gods are on your side this weekend.